YouTube. We appreciate you taking the time to take the journey with us. We trust that you will feel a significant part of us. You will connect with our message. If we can be a blessing to you, do not hesitate to call us, send us a text or an email, and just feel right at home here with Graceview, with the Graceview Church of Christ. Last week we started talking about hope and hopelessness. I placed on the bulletin board the suicide statistics here in South Carolina. They are alarming, but much of that is caused by a feeling of hopelessness. According to that information, every day in South Carolina, 2 people take their own lives. That's far too high. And then the teenagers, ages 12 to 19, since 1999, their suicide has just escalated. Teenagers, because they have a feeling of hopelessness. Now, one of the problems, not only among teenagers, but here is a problem that's in the world, and that is people take on the imagined pain of other people. And sometimes we express a pain we really don't have. It's imagined, it's envisioned. And then we will speak about that, and then other people begin to feel what we are feeling, and they leave the conversation headed toward hopelessness. I want you to think seriously about the things that you say. Remember, we talked about throw a rock out into the water, waves. And God has placed us in the midst of hopelessness so that we can create some hope waves. But if we speak less, instead of us helping the situation, we make it worse. Make it worse. Years ago, a man had an illness, and another man went up to him and said, "You know, my brother had that, and he died in 3 months." Well, you don't want to say that to a person. You want to give. Now, I'm not suggesting you go up and tell him you're going to live to be old as Methuselah, but at least don't say that doesn't add grace to it. Now, let's define, I want to look at the solution. It's a feeling of expectation for an undesirable outcome and expect it to happen badly. Our society is almost built on that. The negative news are reported. Just a few weeks ago, a hurricane was in Orlando, and the report initially was that the severe winds were going to come as far as Spartanburg and Asheville, North Carolina. What happened? They was on the other side of Charlotte. And people had a high level of anxiety. The school in Greenville County was closed. So I'm not opposed to taking precautionary measures. That's not the point. But I'm saying people take on and exasperate the hopelessness. So hopelessness is a feeling. It's a feeling of anticipation that the outcome is going to be desirable. Okay. Now, centered thoughts, Satan-centered thoughts form our hopelessness. Our Satan thoughts form our feelings of hopelessness. Feelings of hope make the connection. Our hopelessness, our feeling of hopelessness is connected to stories so that you were sent to. They went out and supervised hopeless you. The other salesman called his supervisor and said, "What a golden opportunity. Nobody got shoes." Two men looked at the same situation. One looked at it hopefully, and the other looked at a case of hopelessness. Hopelessness has led to a depression. Hopelessness has led to depression that has led many people to commit suicide. And the unfortunate experience of people who are suicidal. As a matter of fact, 3 of the people suicide is a helpless feeling to be sitting talking with a person who is trying to match argument with you that life and their family and everything would be better off if they died. That's and you can't, because they see a feeling of hopelessness. Now, hopelessness occasionally leads people to active suicide. Active suicide. Active suicide. Active suicide is intentionally activating a known plan that will lead to your death. Let's look in the Bible and see that. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 31. 1 Samuel chapter 31. And you will see that it flowed from hopelessness. Now, also, you're going to see who this is that came into a situation of hopelessness. 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse number 1, all the way through verse 6. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines overtook Saul and his sons. Now Saul was the king. And the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchus, the sons of Saul. So Saul's sons died in the battle. Verse 3. The battle went heavily against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Look at verse 4. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and pierce me through with it. Otherwise, these uncircumcised will come and pierce me through and make sport of me." But his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. So Saul took his sword and fell on it. Now, why did Saul do that? He found himself in a situation where he had feelings of hopelessness. He has been wounded in the battle. And he said, if I am captured, the enemy is going to make fun of me. And so guess what? I don't want that to happen. So he killed himself. Now watch the text. Look at verse 5. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. Why did this come about? A feeling of hopelessness. Matthew 27, verse 1. Matthew 27, verse 1. Now when morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people conferred together against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him, led him away, and delivered him to Pilate the governor. Then when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that he had been condemned, he felt remorse, returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. But they said, what is that to us? See to that yourself. Now stop right there because I want to explain this. Now notice what Judas did. He betrayed Jesus for how much money? 30. Are y'all with me? For how much money? 30 pieces of silver. And then when he saw the predicament that he was in, notice who he went to. Who did he go to? He went to the chief priest. Do you realize what the priest's job was? The priest's job was to offer sacrifices so people could get forgiveness for their sin. So when Judas goes to the priest, who is supposed to help him get forgiveness of his sin, when Judas goes and confess his sin, he said to the priest, I have sinned. 5. He threw the pieces of silver into the temple sanctuary, departed, went away, hanged himself. So why did he do that? Hopelessness. You know, the very people who were supposed to offer sacrifice for him said, we're not going to do anything. You into that, buddy. So his feeling of hopelessness. Now, everybody understands that act of suicide. Take your deep breath. Don't think I'm picking on you, but I am. Hopelessness often leads to passive suicide. Passive. Negligently or recklessly walking down a known path that leads to death. Negligently. Have you heard someone say, you're going to die with something, so you might as well just enjoy life and just do whatever. You're going to die with it. You ever heard people say, well, you can't die before your time? Well, if something cut your head off yesterday, you died. But you're still here. And people think like that. But listen, you don't have to be reckless. There are people in experiences in Scripture. Jacob didn't die with cancer-ridden body. Jacob called his sons to his bedside, gave them some